Today, we will be looking at Microsoft PowerPoint 2013, starting with the basics and moving to some of the more sophisticated tools that can make your projects shine. In order to learn the most from this tutorial, I would suggest having PowerPoint open on your computer and working alongside me. If there are specific parts of this video you want to review, check out the table of contents in the video description. PowerPoints are not just info dumps. The purpose is to use impactful images and words to help your audience mentally organize what you're saying and to pick out the highlights, so you will need to know what your goal is and have a plan. On the screen you can see my general outline for this presentation. We will cover choosing a template, using a design with organization in mind, adding text and pictures, and using special effects. The first step is to pick a template so that your presentation is as effective as possible. Before we go any further, I'm going to clarify a couple of terms. When I refer to a tab, that will be found at the top of your screen by the orange File tab. Everything else I talk about will show up under one of those tabs. When choosing a template, think about what kind of colors and design fit with your theme. Start by going to the Design tab, where you'll see a drop-down menu of templates. If you like the layout of the design but don't love the colors and fonts so much, each template usually has a set of variations on the right. And if you're super ambitious about personalizing the theme, there's another drop-down button on the Variants section, where you can choose color palettes, fonts, and more. If none of the preloaded designs in the program fit, you can also go to Browse for Themes at the bottom of the template drop-down menu. That will get you started browsing online for other themes. This is where, if you don't have an outline yet, you definitely need to stop and make sure you know where you're going so your presentation can come together as easily as possible. As you start creating your show, add a basic slide by clicking the button above the words New Slide. Many more slide types are also available in the drop-down menu. The drop-down menu is where you can find different ways to arrange pictures and words to fit what you're doing. To start off right, set up a title slide. This is where you grab your audience's attention and make sure they know what the presentation is all about. The title slide can be pretty basic, or you can dress it up a little. I played around with fonts and word size a little for this presentation, but left the basic slide alone. If you made a mistake when adding new slides, you can change the slide layout with the Layout drop-down menu. The next thing we will cover is inserting text. There are several tricks to this beyond simply typing in the text box, particularly rules that will prevent your presentation from becoming the stereotypical death by PowerPoint. The first rule of PowerPoint is to keep it brief. This is not the place for essays. Only use a PowerPoint for highlights. And this is why. There are a few other things that are important to remember while adding text. First of all, content is most important. It doesn't matter how fancy your presentation is if the content is poor. Second, keep your ideas brief, because it is harder for people to remember what you say than what they read. Third, keep the words big and readable and only use crazy fonts if you have a very, very good reason. And finally, proofread your presentation so people don't get distracted by typos. Here's a good example of what not to do. It's basic, has a bunch of typos, and has a cliched font. This is also a good example of what not to do. There are too many things to focus on, the pictures do not match the point, and it is very hard to read the words. Overall, the basic rule of thumb is to keep it simple, but simple doesn't mean no effort at all. Cite your sources. This applies as much in presentations as in your essays. Just because it is on the internet does not mean it is free game. If you want to use things without crediting them, you can do an advanced Google search for pictures that are free to use or share. Otherwise, though, tell people where you got your pictures and information. There are two benefits for you here. First, people are more likely to take your information seriously if they know you used good sources. Second, copyright laws do exist and academic ethics are important. Your professors and people in the professional world will tend to care. Assuming that you have a handle on what is special about words in PowerPoint, let's get to the flashy stuff. Pictures. Rule number 3 is this: don't use clip art. Just don't. It is often better to have no pictures at all than clip art. It's cliched, overused, and often doesn't actually add anything. So just to recap, avoid clip art like the plague. There are 3 main ways to insert pictures. Go to the Insert tab and select the Pictures option to use pictures on your computer. You can also click on Online Pictures and use the options there. If it's easier to just work from the picture itself, you can also copy and paste from your computer or online. You can do that by right-clicking on the picture, selecting Copy, and then right-clicking on a slide and selecting Paste. Just remember you still need to cite your sources. And while we're on the topic of that rule, cite your sources, give credit, and get credibility. That said, if you have any photographic inclinations at all, taking your own pictures can be the best way to get around rule number 2. But if you don't have time or energy for that, or just need something different, make sure you have a works cited slide or something. I typically start with a slide for all my textual sources and a slide for all my visual sources, but I have also used animations and visuals in combination for a works cited sequence. For an example of how that can work, check out another of my presentations linked below. You can also use the works cited or bibliography style that you would use for an academic paper. Now for the final touches. The 5 main areas that we will cover are text effects, photo effects, working with animations and transitions, inserting data, and adding video and audio. There are 2 main areas for editing or adding text. The first section is on the Home tab. If you look at the font and paragraph sections under the Home tab, that's where you're going to get most of your basic editing functions. In the font section, you can change the font, text size, and color. You can also make it bold, italicized, underlined, or shadowed. If you want to, you can mess with spacing and capitalization. In the paragraph section, you can add or remove bullets or numbering, change how the text lines up, and things like that. The bottom picture on this slide shows the Format tab. The Format tab, which has an orange line and the words Drawing Tools over it, only appears if you have clicked something you want to edit. Some of the coolest editing functions exist here. You can play with the color, shape, borders, and effects of the text box itself, or you can get up close and personal with the words themselves. Word art is especially fun, although I would suggest using these special effects sparingly so they stay special. If you want to add text somewhere new on the slide, you can add text boxes. That is found under the Insert tab. The only catch is that the text boxes don't always keep the style from the rest of the slideshow, so just double check for consistency. I talked a little bit about word art a couple slides ago. This exists not only under the Format tab, but also under the Insert tab. Next is playing more with photos. There are so many ways to play with photos in PowerPoint, and that is really where your presentation starts taking shape. The first step is to select the photo you want to edit, and a Format tab will appear on the far right. There are several fun editing options you can choose from here. You can try removing the background of a photo for a cutout. If you play around with corrections, color, and artistic effects, you can make subtle or startling changes to the picture's color and texture. If you play with picture styles, there is a wide array of frames and preset styles to choose from. The one thing I'd caution here, though, is that it's best to keep things consistent. Your presentation will look more cohesive if you just use 1 or 2 consistent styles. You can layer pictures by using the Arrange section under the Format tab, and the Crop tool is invaluable. This is where you can cut off parts of the photo to make the most important parts stand out or just make the picture the right size and shape. Another visual element that is often very helpful is the Shapes tool found under the Insert tab. This can be used for backgrounds, charts, pictures, and more. All that limits you is time and ideas. One of the most exciting parts of finishing up a PowerPoint is making it come together with slide transitions. The 2013 version of PowerPoint uses the term transitions for the slide as a whole and animations for things in the slide. We're going to start by going to the Transitions tab and looking around. There is a wide array of transitions in the drop-down menu, and you can also play with a few effect options, timing, and whether you want to time your slides or make them go forward with a click. It is a good idea to pick one transition and stick with it for the whole presentation unless you have a good reason to switch it around. You can do this by choosing a transition style and then clicking on Apply to All, which is over on the right. You can also have a lot of fun with the Animations tab. You can customize just about everything. The animation pane is vital if you want to play with timing, since you'll need to decide when and how the animations take effect, and in what order if you have several. If you want to work with data or things like that, you may need to know how to create tables. Those are found under the Insert tab. Probably the most valuable data tool is a chart. You can create a huge variety of charts, from pie charts to bars and more. However, you will probably need to have Microsoft Excel to use this tool because the 2 programs link up as you put together the data. Finally, Smart Art is useful for showing the relationships between various ideas. This is where you will find things like cycle diagrams, pyramids, matrices, visual lists, and more. The last 2 things I want to cover are adding video and audio to your presentation. Both can be found under the Insert tab. However, be aware that if you send your presentation to other computers, videos may or may not transfer. Also be aware of what equipment you will be able to use since you may not always have access to sound. You can look on OneDrive, YouTube, or Facebook for videos, starting directly from the PowerPoint program. You can also use a video embed code if you have it. Finally, you can also add audio to your presentation, which is what I have used in the past when uploading presentations to YouTube. In this presentation, we have covered a lot of ground, but there's a lot more to discover and explore. My hope is that this is a good starter for a lot of the tools in Microsoft PowerPoint 2013.